Hi, I am Lauren with Me Too Many Voices, and today I am joined by Anna Kreiner. And she is going to be talking to us a little bit about sex education, consent, and normalizing healthy boundaries. Anna and I have been planning to do this for a little while now, so thank you for being here and taking the time. And I will pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Kreiner. I'm going to be turning 20 in a month. I'm a student at U of M. I'm a pre-med student. I'm studying biopsychology, cognition, neuroscience. It's a mouthful, but it's really just fancy neuroscience. And I have a dance minor. I've been a huge part of our sexual assault prevention and awareness center since I was a freshman, but I just recently started volunteering there. It was a lot of training and super validating as a survivor, so that was super cool. And so yeah, I'll just jump right in. If you guys have any questions about my education, like, feel free. So I really wanted to start off with the basics and really define what consent is. And it's basically permission to do something to happen or agreement to do something. So really it's not just in sexual conversations, and we typically talk about it in that way because it is important in these conversations. But I really think it's important to start off with just as young kids and normalizing consent, because I think starting off in college, I think that's when I finally understood what consent was and what it looked like. And I think a lot can agree that, at least for public education in Michigan, so this is my experience, I did not have a very good sex education, let alone a consent education, and I really feel like we should emphasize that, and there should be some laws in place to teach students what healthy consent looks like when we're talking about sex education. And on top of that, and I think we're slowly getting there, but also just in TVs and movies, and when we're looking at like a sex scene or something, like, you don't see consent happen, but we do talk about in SAPAC, which is our campus sexual assault prevention awareness center, we talk about how consent, if it's like a very emphasized yes, which you can sometimes, you don't always have to verbalize it. Sometimes you can see it physically, but it does have to be defined in a relationship with both individuals, what a yes looks like. So that's my spiel on that. Let's see. So yeah, I really think a very good first step is getting at least public schools to have those conversations with students. And yeah, and I don't think consent should just be that alone. And we can take some questions because I saw some questions.
We had someone asking if yes is an affirmative yes. Absolutely. If it's not an enthusiastic yes, without threat or coercion, like if you're afraid to say no, that's not consent.
And often when someone is being coerced, it's not going to be an enthusiastic yes, right? So yeah, and I think it was a past live that we did. If the answer is no, someone said if the answer is no and you have to keep getting to do things to change the answer, then it's coercion. So I really liked that, and I've been using that a lot too. Yeah.
Very, very true. And then someone else wrote in, an American teenager will get about 14,000 references to sex from TV in a year. That's a lot.
That's, yeah. And at least from my experience with, as a teenager watching shows like this, you don't see it. You really, and I think even like because it's a really old show, at least like having the conversation like, hey, like this is consent and this is where the world is going. And if you're not seeing it in TV, that's a problem and you have to recognize that. So I think like the conversation needs to begin no matter if it's in TV or not, because after a certain point, like you have to take responsibility for it.
Definitely, definitely. I think those were all the questions for now. I know earlier you and I were talking about, you touched on it, how we don't learn about consent in schools. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because I think everything you were saying, that was wonderful and so important.
Yeah, I think definitely we should really begin to start that like individually in families with your own children and within schools and really enforce that well. So for an example, I think we properly do teach kids like, hey, you have to share and you have to ask before you can play with a toy, or something like that. And I feel like that was pretty well emphasized, but we don't take it a step further and talk about, can you touch your friends? So for example, I was a volunteer at Leslie Science Center in Ann Arbor. And so it was just a summer camp. And as a summer camp leader, I had to like enforce rules and things like that. So one of the number one rules was you have to ask consent before you hug someone or touch your friends. And it was really well enforced. They emphasized it well. And that was really good to see when I was a teenager, because I was a volunteer as a teenager. So, yeah, that was really great to see. And I saw kids, they would literally just be there a week or two. And by the end of the week, they're following the rules and they're asking their friends before they can touch them and give them hugs. And it doesn't matter if it's from love. And there's a lot of like, you have so much love for your friend and I know you want to hug them, but you have to ask first because you don't know where they're at. And it was really great to see. And I think normalizing that would be very wonderful and important. And it needs to be seen in the household too. So, and emphasized in school, in preschool, in elementary school. The teachers need to be properly informed with that as well.
So true. And I mean, especially at a younger age, the adults, the supervisors, the parents in the situations need to help enforce it and model that behavior.
Yeah.
It always frustrates me when parents or family members make their, especially younger kids or teenagers, hug other family members because they're family. But it should be up to the kid, up to the individual if they want to hug somebody.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, why aren't we giving kids that support and allowing them to make decisions about their own body? Like, you're still a human, you're still your own person if you're under 18. So you should be allowed to say yes or no in those kind of situations.
So much so, and it's, how else are you supposed to learn if you're not given that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
suddenly when you turn 18, it's not like there's this something that washes over you. Now I understand how to respect my own, try to respect and offer up my own healthy boundaries.
And it's interesting too when we talk about consent when you're under 18, like, oh, well, she didn't know better. Well, you can also not know better when you're 18 or 19. Like, it's not that clear cut, and there's so many more. Just when you put it's like when you turn 18, you're automatically given the responsibility to say no, but no one's given the responsibility to ask.
I'm sorry, Rob, for some reason it's kind of a bad connection, so you broke up a little bit with that part, but
I just said when you turn 18, you're kind of given the responsibility to say no, but no one's given the responsibility to ask consent.
Totally. Totally. Thank you for that. Thanks for repeating it for me. I had a couple of other questions come in. Well, Anna, that's such a great point. What should we do when kids start asking questions about sex? And at what age should we start? Do you think we should start talking to kids about safe and unsafe touch? Great question.
Yeah. I think like what you said, first of all, is you have to normalize. If we I study a lot of like different psychology things, and Freud kind of believes that it's always kind of an underlying thing. There's mixed feelings with Freud, but there is this theory that there's an underlying conversation there all the time. And so I think kids already see it. So first of all, it's modeling it, and is always showing consent. And when they start asking, I think, hold on, let me try to. When they do begin to ask, I think it's, when they do begin to ask, it's important to, first of all, I think a lot of conversations, if, a lot of families who are religious have a lot of expectations for that. And I think, first of all, is coming from a place of like, okay, this is what it is, and you have your own choice, but it's between you and God, or you have authority over your own body. And empowering them in those conversations is really important.
Much so, and teaching the kid that they are their own person, and learning about consent, starting with, if you start with playing with toys, and once they get a little older, kind of like you talked about again, with the hugging, and I think especially kids will always hear stuff at school or with their friends, and then they come home and they start asking questions. I am not a parent, and I'm not quite sure the age, but I think if the kid is asking questions, then it's something that they're thinking about. It's something their friends were probably talking about, and that having as much of a conversation about it as you feel comfortable. It doesn't have to be the full conversation that you would maybe have at, 8 or 9, versus, 14 or 15. But again, if they're asking, it means that there needs to be a conversation, I think.
Agreed.
Thank you for being here, and all thank you. Apologies for the technical issues. I'm very much enjoying this conversation about consent and normalizing healthy boundaries. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Mostly what I had in mind. I guess, do you have any questions for me? Do you have any questions about my education or anything?
I am just so impressed by it, and kind of fascinated by what you're doing. I know, remind me again, I know it's neuroscience, and then I know you're also minoring in dance, and someone actually commented that you have I think she used to do some ballroom dancing at U of M maybe, and I know you're a dance minor. And I know you're pre-med, so in a dream world, what would you like to do with that? Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, so before college, I really didn't emphasize mental health in my life. So I originally was thinking I wanted to do pediatrics. And then over time, I think in college, I've really seen how much I care about other women, a lot. And so I think I want to be an OBGYN now. I'm not going to like put myself in a box or anything, but that's kind of where I'm heading. And because my major talks about, the brain a lot, and I understand mental health a lot better, I want to use that as a doctor, hopefully, and be able to support women. And that's why I'm going to be an RA in a women's dorm as well. So I have a lot of practice with, just supporting women the best I can. So
I think that's incredible, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here, but it's nice and refreshing. hearing that. And I personally, I've had a lot of experience with it with doctors that I don't feel like listened to me, or took me
Mhm.
seriously. So it's always nice to hear, and I can tell that you will not be that kind of doctor, and that you will listen and prioritize putting your patients first. And again, it comes back to consent, allowing your patients to advocate for themselves, and allowing them to know their bodies, and trusting them on that, and then using your skills
Yeah.
and guidance as best as you can.
Yeah, and I think along with that, understanding what Black individuals go through, specifically Black women, because they're not believed in a lot of like um, health environments. And so, as a direct caregiver too, I see a lot of clients come through my house, and you can just see how much more they don't really trust health professionals. So that's something I really want to emphasize, hopefully, as an OBGYN, is like believing those women. And specifically, as like if a woman's going through a pap smear, you a lot of times they tend to have not everyone, but some who struggle with PTSD. Pap smears are really scary, and it's it's really difficult because yes, you're giving consent, but at the same time, it's really uncomfortable, and especially like if it's very soon after being assaulted, like that's something to consider. And so many women go through things like this. So
100%. Thank you for bringing that up. It's definitely, it can be traumatic. And I think that a lot of, women forego going to the doctor just because they are scared. And so if they had someone that, was more patient, and, would kind of talk them through that consent wise, and, this is what's going to happen next. Like, are you ready? And being more supportive. I think that's such a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
I saw a comment also about what kind of sex curriculum should schools have, and they're talking about the sex education show on Netflix. And I love that show. I think if anyone has ever seen it as well, there is this when his mom came in as the main sex ed person. So many more students felt comfortable going to her because it was confidential, and emphasizing confidentiality is like top thing in my opinion. Um, and that should be like first priority in schools, and the students should know that if they do choose to go to their counselor about something that happened, or even better if they had a specialized sex education teacher, that this would be even better. So I really liked that part in the sex education show, and I would really love to see that in public schools especially.
Don't remember having sex education in school. I'm sure I did, but the fact that I don't remember it, I think speaks volumes, that if I had it, that it was not very helpful, and it did not stick with me at all, because I have zero memories of like being in any health class and having any of these conversations, let alone consent education. Not at all.
Yeah. 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 I agree.
So definitely important, definitely important. Um, well, thank you again for being here, and sharing your insight. Um, let's see, we have one other question that we'll answer before we wrap it up. Why did we didn't have sex ed in India? Why did they only focus on menstruation or avoiding pregnancies? Because I mean, in my opinion, misogyny is what creates the curriculum, and um, I I think that there's a lot of skills that should be taught in schools that aren't. I think that self-regulating, healthy boundaries, healthy coping, Skills should all be taught at a, mindfulness grounding from a young age, because it can't be learning at home. And oftentimes they are actually learning unhealthy boundaries, or, growing up in abusive, adversive households. And how are they supposed to learn those skills? And the need is only going to get bigger as they get older.
Mm-hmm.
I also wish they would bring back, like, I wish I could have taken like a home ec class or a finance class that taught me how to like balance a checkbook, like just practical skills. Cooking, I don't know. But
yeah, that should be a required class, like just a general like life skills, consent education, sex education class, like, and one class isn't gonna drill it in their heads either. It's got to be a consistent.
You're breaking up again, but yes, absolutely consistent, regular curriculum year after year that just keeps building upon each other. You're building upon your skill set. Thank you for being here again. Apologies for any technical issues. Anna, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really enjoyed connecting with you more and having this conversation, and I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Well, I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining us, and stay safe. Bye.